Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruber.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And today we have a very interesting, the title of this probably jumped out at you, but because most of the time when people talk about cancer, it's like, oh, cancer, death. But what if cancer can save your life, right? So we're excited to have Emilee Garfield with us today, because that's one of the messages that she shares. And so we want to talk about that. So Emilee, welcome. Maybe to start off with, just give kind of the little thumbnail of how you kind of got to this point, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes.
Awesome. Yeah. So, when I tell people cancer saved my life, some people are like, what? Like, how did cancer save your life? So I'm going to take you back to year 2015, right before I was diagnosed. I was just turned 39 years old. I had got the courage to leave a very toxic marriage. And it took me about 10 years of living with this unhappiness inside of me, feeling like I was dying. Already I felt dead. Like I didn't feel alive. I was so unhappy. I had 3 little kids. They were my miracle babies. I had the perfect house in Santa Barbara. Like I had everything, like, right? Why would I not be happy? So the lesson I learned, so all of a sudden I finally am in this new life, and then bam, another turn, right? Now I have fucking cancer again. Not the first time, but I was born with cancer. So I was literally born with a rare childhood cancer called embryonical rhabdomyosarcoma. And it is really the story of my life, because in that journey, when I was 4, my father committed suicide. And my parents they were told that my cancer was inoperable, and they closed me up and told my parents. And then right after that, my dad had committed suicide. So I didn't know all this at the time, but later on through the cancer journey, I would learn that my childhood story would make a huge impact in my life and the story that I told myself. So my shadow, I learned about the shadow work and stuff, which I'll go back into later. But basically, cancer saved my life because all these years, for 40 plus years, I lived in this little 4-year-old body. I call her my little inner child, who felt like she was unlovable, like she didn't matter, she wasn't good enough. And I really blamed myself for my dad's suicide. And so I hated cancer. It was like the worst thing that could ever have happened to me. I grew up with no friends that had cancer. So for me, it was very shameful. It was like an embarrassing thing. I had this ugly scar. I wanted to be like everybody else. I was a cheerleader, but I was always like covering my stomach up because they wore these short shirts. I hated wearing bikinis. So, I mean, imagine that was my whole entire life. I lived with anxiety. I had, I guess I had depression, which I didn't know it was depression because I was functioning, right? I was living, but deep down inside, like I knew I really wasn't happy. And I left my marriage. A month later, I'm diagnosed with stage 3C ovarian cancer. And I'm told that my cancer is incurable. So when you hear the word incurable,
Yeah.
The first thing that goes through your head is I'm going to fucking die. Like, why me? The anger shows up. I deserve this. This is my destiny. And, I went down a dark hole. I went down the rabbit hole, like of, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? I have 3 little kids. I have twins that are 9. I have a 12-year-old, and my kids are mad at me for leaving their dad. It was just this whole shit show is what it was. And it took me about 3 weeks until after I started my treatments that I was sent to end of life therapy, because the cancer I had was extreme. It was an extreme case. The surgery was going to be 15 hours. They were going to remove my vagina, my rectum, my colon, my bladder, my rectus abdominis, and that's your six-pack muscles, pull them through the vagina and recreate a new vagina. So at the time I brought the guy that I was dating into the hospital room with me. And I just thought, I told him, like, you can just leave now. And that moment was like the worst day of my life. And I remember my surgeon saying to me, Emilee, if anyone can do this, it's you. She said, 90% of surviving is in your mindset. She's like, half the women that come in here, all they do is research on the internet. They're going to die. That's what they focus on. But you're not that person. You're young. You got 3 beautiful kids to live for. And not to mention, like, I had just come out of the psych ward for a episode of depression because I wanted to kill myself. So here I am now, already hating my life, hating myself, doubting myself. And now I'm faced with fucking cancer again. Like, how am I going to do this? Right? That was the journey.
Wow.
So I have to wait 4 more weeks until she does another biopsy. So I get a second opinion, which was a lifesaver for me. So she finds out that I do have ovarian cancer. It's a different kind of cancer, and I won't need this dramatic surgery, but I still am going to have a colon bag. So lesson number 1 is always get a second opinion, always, because the first one, like, everyone sees, they may not get enough tissue in the biopsy, or, it just gave me hope is what it gave me. Like, it still was a shitty diagnosis. I'm not going to lie, but at least I wasn't going to have to live with that. I mean, I'm a professional movement teacher. I teach Pilates and yoga. Like, my body was my job. So I was going to have to figure out fast after my surgery, being a single mom, fighting in a divorce, how that goes, like fighting over money. The money was tied up in a house. Like, how am I going to fucking pay my bills right now? Like, I'm like, the bills are coming. I'm stressed out, like financially stressed out. And I had to get resilient, right? I had to figure out, like, I didn't want to ask for help. I'm not somebody who asked for help, but someone did a GoFundMe thing. And like, I felt like shame around that. Like, oh, I don't want to be that person. Right. But it saved my life. Like, I could pay my bills and feed my kids. And then it slowly started building up around like, what can I do to empower myself to keep going every day? Because every day I wake up sucks right now. Like, it's awful. And I'll never forget that day in that end of life therapy session when he said, you do have a choice. You don't have to finish your treatment, and you don't have to have that surgery. You can just live the next 6 to 12 months and, make memories with your kids. And I literally, it just went through me. And I was like, I'm not fucking ready to die yet. No, this is now I'm going to start living my life. This is the moment where I take back my power and I decide how this journey is going to go. Even if I die, why not live your best life today? Because in the end, nobody really knows, right, what's going to happen. You can change that story. And from there, it was like everything started falling in place for me. Like, the lessons started coming. So my first lesson was, I went to an energy healer down in San Diego. I was referred to him by a friend. And of course, every cancer patient or survivor deals with anger. And like I said, my anger stemmed not from the cancer really, but from my life before. Like, I was still angry about my childhood cancer and angry about, why my marriage didn't work out and blah, blah, blah. But it's really not about that. So I go down to this energy healer and he puts his hand on my stomach. And he said, whoa, Emilee, like, you are so toxic. Like, your body's radiating heat. You're going to probably die of anger before you die of cancer. So that was my first lesson. Like, how do I heal anger?
Yeah.
Who do I have to forgive? Myself was probably the first person I had to forgive. And then it was, I found a mentor, like one of my allies. And I was like, okay, this one was what's your new life story going to look like? So then I started learning about brain and behavior and how our brain is super powerful. Like you can rewire your thoughts. You can change that story. And then it became like a game for me. I read this book called Super Better. I don't have it right here, but it's a science-based book. It is all about, people who have post-traumatic growth or post-traumatic stress and how you can turn that around. So you can take cancer or divorce or anything, right? Anything traumatic event. And you can turn it around and make your life better after. So you use it as like fuel.
What was the name of the book?
It was called Super Better.
Hmm.
God, do I have it right here?
That's okay.
Awesome. I just started doing little things that would like train my brain. Or there was another book called You Can't Ruin My Day, because everything was like ruining my day. So I was like, okay, like I can either let it ruin my day or I can choose to like find joy in this situation. So I started going to my treatments and chemotherapy, and I actually started to enjoy it. Whereas everyone else around me was terrified. They're like, oh my God, cancer. It was like the worst thing. And they were so negative. So I chose to not hang around negative people. I chose not to join negative support groups. I chose to hire a life coach instead of going to a therapist, which I did for a while. But after a while, I was like living in my same depressing story. And so I knew if I was going to survive this, I wanted to like become a new person. So I wanted to create this new identity. And so I used dancing, I used, writing and all these things to help empower myself. And in the end, I didn't know if I was going to survive. But every year I got that milestone. It was like, I lived in 3 months cycles, every 3 months. And once I hit that, your NED or no evidence of disease or cancer free, every year gets easier. The anxiety, I have no more anxiety. I have no more depression. It's all gone. And I really feel like I've healed myself from the inside out. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Wow. Oh, so many things. Okay.
But,
So yeah, no, but it's just this. Wow. Thank you. And thank you for fighting and being here, because you have such an incredible message for people. On a very, very random personal note, my mother died from rhabdomyosarcoma.
No way. Wow.
She was one of the few adults that had ever been diagnosed with it, because it's a childhood disease.
I got the chills. Yep.
Yeah. As soon as you said a rare childhood cancer, I thought, I bet I know what you're going to say. And that's how my mother passed away.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's just so, I've never met anybody else that had that. I mean, because you're not supposed to survive it, right? So of course I wouldn't have met anybody else that had that. But to talk about the anger, right? So many people hold on to anger about their childhood. My parents were a piece of shit. I had an awful child. Why don't I have more money? He was a jerk. She was an asshole. And they hold on to that anger. And you're right, it is so toxic. And it fuels all these other emotions of shame and grief. And, so how did you, other than the gentleman in San Diego saying, wow, you've got so much anger, how did you make amends with yourself and with your ex and with your childhood? And was there a specific thing you did, or was just the recognition enough?
Oh,
or how did that go?
There was a lot. There was like, I feel like 7 years on this journey, right? So every year I pick something new, like a new course to take. I'm always doing something to better myself and learning. Like I love learning. If I had these tools that I learned now, I probably could have still been married, right? But I didn't know. So you put two people together in a marriage who both had trauma. And, unless you do the work yourself, like you can't fix someone, and I realized, I can send my husband compassion today, an ex-husband, although he may not say the same for me, but I've done the work, right? So I can see like in him, he has a little child that's sad. And, I abandoned him too, like his mother did. And he's angry at me, right? I don't blame him. But, I personally didn't know all the trauma that I went through. I thought trauma was like, you had to be raped, or you had to be like, it was like, my trauma wasn't like that. So I never gave myself permission to say I had trauma, because people had it worse than me.
Yeah.
And then when I was in the psych ward, I was like, I just feel like dying. And, my friend shamed me for that. Like that mom that's in the psych ward, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because the psychiatrist came in and said, this is not the place for you. Like, you've never had therapy. Like, no one's ever told you this is like trauma. I'm like, no. And so I started going into trauma work, and I started taking this course, which I teach now. It's called the Art of Quantum Living process. So it's really about transforming yourself from the inside out, but you have to go back in time, as uncomfortable as it is. And you basically like take a scenario or a trigger, right? There are certain triggers in my life that are still there, very, right? So I went through those I'm just going to pick 5 specific times. And so you write down the trigger, the emotions, the feelings, and then you have your shadow or I am statement. I'm not lovable. I'm not worth it. Like, I am broken. I am flawed. And then you see that every time somebody triggers you or any situation, that there's something inside of you that needs to be more healed. And so I would keep doing this over and over, and I still do it today. And then finally you rewrite that trigger with these new qualities that are within you. Like, I am lovable. I am good enough. And so once you can see that, and then you can write it, and then you give yourself this authentic action of taking care of yourself, over time with practice, you start to shift. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not that same woman I was 7 years ago. I am completely different woman, but it does take work, right? There's no magic pill. There's no and everyone wants the magic pill that you have to do the work. And I look at it as, like, empowering, and like, I love, and showing my kids, like, this is, you're going to make mistakes in life. Like, like, no one's perfect, right? But you can choose to get back up on your 2 feet. You can forgive, you can, apologize, own your story, own what the mistakes, and then move on, right? And if the other person chooses not to forgive you, that's on them, not on you. Like, you did your work, right? You can't change other people.
Oh boy, if we could.
I know.
Well, and one thing that you said, towards the beginning, as you were sharing your story, really struck me too, where you said that you already felt dead.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think, especially when people talk about cancer, it scares the shit out of everybody.
Totally.
Right. I mean, cancer is the big boogeyman, right? But what's interesting is like you said, if you already felt dead before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is a lot of times it takes some situation like a cancer, staring physical death in the face, to realize that we're already dead, that we're not actually living, right? Which was one of the things that I kind of gathered from you as you were talking about starting to live really from that point, right? Starting to see things as fun, right?
Yeah.
Going to chemotherapy or some of the other stuff in a different way, and kind of flipping that around. So how did you kind of do that? How did you reframe it?
Well, I reframed it. That's a great question, because, one thing is I already had allowed my childhood cancer to ruin my life. It was, and I was just done with that story. I wanted to close that chapter and write a new chapter. And like you said, like, I already felt powerless. I felt dead. I was like, just walking around, doing things for other people, being a people pleaser, like worried what everyone's thinking about me. And then cancer comes. And I was like, well, what if I just fucking like start fresh? Like, what if I have like a fresh slate? Like, this is like the chemotherapy is going into my body, it's burning all the cancer cells. The old me is gone now. And I looked at it as like a new opportunity. Every time like the drug would come in, like, okay, what are you going to do today, Emilee? Just at one day at a time. What's it going to be? Something. So I journaled, I wrote a carrying bridge, and I wrote, I had quotes, and I just, every day I focused on the good thing, even if it was like a flower that bloomed. I mean, it was simple. It wasn't like this big dramatic shift in like one day, right? It was the little things. But you're right. I was already at rock bottom. Like, the only way for me to go was either up or dead, right? So I had 2 options. Like, you're this close to dying. Like, you can either give up and surrender. And I did have moments of that. Trust me, when I had my bowel obstruction at the end, and they said, you may not be able to have your ileostomy reversed. And I was sitting in the hospital, told my doctor, I said, I can't do this anymore. This is like a year. And I'm like, I cannot do this. Like, I'm ready to go. Like, just give me the morphine button and I'm out. Right. And he's like, I know you. You're just having a really bad day. He goes, I want you to get up, walk around the hospital, and don't come back until bedtime, because you can get in the spiral in your head, right? And just go down the rabbit hole, all the dark things of all the things you hate about your life. Why me? I'm never going to be able to do this. So it's a process of, like I said, going into that, the story, like the story that we all tell ourselves. We all have a story.
Yep.
Cancer or not, like we all have one. And so what is, ask your follow, like, what is the story you're telling yourself? What would be possible for you on the other side of that story when, not if, like when you shift that thought? What if, instead of saying, what if I die? Like, what if I live?
Right. Why do we're not up in the middle of the night, what ifing the good stuff? God, what if I get that raise? And what if he loves me? And what if I get the, what if it's not cancer?
So
and what
here's
if it's
my number one tip. Like, don't wait until like you're cancer free, or don't wait until you get cancer. Like, to help people, like, start now. Like, I did not wait until I was told I was cancer free. That would have been a long time to start changing my life. I started the moment I got cancer, and I would do anything I could to find the people to help me along the journey. You cannot do it alone. It's very difficult. And so when you find other people and mentors and coaches and anyone that can help you, guide you, that supports you and loves you and doesn't judge you, that's the person you want to be with.
Yeah.
A big thing was I had to set boundaries for myself around, I have a couple of friends from before, but I have a whole new group of friends. Right. And most of them are all professional, like life coaches and stuff, and new cancer survivors. But, that's part of the journey, is like, maybe you're hanging around with people that aren't like, supporting you and believing in you. Like, for me, like, I didn't believe in myself. So I'm hanging out with someone who's not going to like encourage me to grow. Like, that person's not in my inner circle anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about the whole support system and inner circle. And I mean, so much of what you're talking about has been like so many of our past episodes.
Oh, good.
So well. So we're as Capricorn needs to chime in. So we're starting to run out of time. So you do coaching now too, right? You help others that are, what clients find you?
So obviously, like my Instagram is Cancer Saved My Life. So I attract cancer survivors, but interesting, more of my clients are not cancer survivors. They're like the clients of the cancer patient, or their husband or wife passed away from cancer. Most of them, a lot of them they come from my studio. I'm a movement professional. And so, I connect movement, the whole mind body connection, like energy work. And so I'm like, hey, like, you might benefit from this. And they are like shocked, because I don't go out and, advertise what I do when I'm in my studio, right? But it's a part of who I am, and it changed me. So if I can help anyone, but yes, clearly, cancer is my niche, right? It's my passion. And I just want to find that woman who wants to better herself, because not everyone does. A lot of people want to live in the victim story, which they're not ready. You have to be ready for the work. Yeah. Those are the people that I work with.
Well, and it's interesting you said it, because I'm a life coach as well. And I have had people show up to my office and they want to complain for an hour about their neighbor's boyfriend's cousin's dog's husband. And I'm like, I'm not coaching them.
Yeah,
and they think it's just a bitch session for an hour. And I'm like, look, if you want to bitch, call a girlfriend and get coffee. Totally. I'm not going to take your time. I'm not going to waste my time or your time. I don't need your money that bad that I want to listen to you bitch about something for an hour, because that's not what coaching is.
No, it's all about moving you forward. Yeah, it's like, where are you now?
And you do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my job to tell you what to. Well, kids just tell me what to do. I can, but that's not coaching.
Exactly.
That's Capricorn taking over. All right. Oh my God, Jason, any final thoughts from you before we send all?
No, Emily, thank you for coming on, because again, I think, I know it's a shorter episode, so people go back and listen to this again, because Emily dropped a bunch of bombs when she was talking. And, for those of you that have been listening to us for a while, we try to throw out, little practices and things that you can do all the time. Emily is the embodiment of like taking most of the things we've been talking about and doing almost all of them.
That's the key word, embody. You have to embody it.
You have to embody it.
Yeah, and feel it. And once you feel it and you start seeing it change, you're going to do it more.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, there's really no reason for us to wait
Never.
until something big happens, a divorce, cancer, whatever else, right? Most people wait, they're dead most of their life. They wait for some big traumatic event or experience to happen before it kicks them in the ass. And then they actually want to start doing stuff, right? How much better would our life be if we started living now
Before you get
instead, you
off,
know?
before you get off, I just want to say really quickly that I was so worried about what would happen to my kids and what they would think about their mom. And, I had this mom guilt. My kids today now are like, they're so happy. They're so happy for me. They're way better off. They're like, because we're not in a toxic yelling marriage. Right. So
Mhm.
it changed, it's just, so if you're afraid of that, like kids are resilient, like kids will bounce back and you just love them, tell them, be honest with them. And that's really what I do with my kids. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Oh, this has been so great. Emilee, tell people where they can reach you. I know you're on Instagram,
Okay, so I'm
Facebook,
on Instagram
website.
at Cancer Saved My Life, and my website is my name, Emilee Garfield. It's Emilee Garfield, like the cat.com.
Yay. Cool.
Garfield and Odie.
Yeah.
Remember those
My
old
favorite
cartoons?
cartoon. I love that cartoon. So
Lasagna.
I'm so glad I'm not fat. I'm fluffy.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I feel honored. I love talking. So anytime you want to talk, just
Yeah. Yay. Well, we're happy you're on. Thank you for sharing your story and for doing the work, because you are leading by example. So
thank
Kathy
you.
Gruver, you're welcome. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week, start incorporating some of these things that Emilee's been talking about, because you can see the smile on her face and you can get an idea of what her life was like before and what it is like now by doing the work. So let's just start doing the work, and we'll see you in the next episode. See ya.
See ya.